It's Kia Stevens of the Father Swap blog, and I am excited to share my incredible interview with author, speaker, and leader Jo Saxton. Recently, I had the opportunity to sit down with her and discuss her newly released book, The Dream of You, as well as the subject of how a father's abandonment impacts a woman's identity. Before I share that interview, I want you to know just a few facts about Jo. She is a Nigerian Londoner living in the Minneapolis area. Her and her husband have two wonderful daughters. She is the chair of the board for 3D Movements, a nonprofit organization that seeks to change the world by putting discipleship and mission back into the hands of ordinary people. She's on the board of advisors for Today's Christian Woman and the co-host of Lead Stories podcast. She has authored 4 books: More Than Enchanting, Breaking Through Barriers to Influence Your World, High Heels and Holiness, Real God, Real Life, and her latest book, The Dream of You. Let go of broken identities and live the life you were made for. I'm honored to share this video with you, not just because Jo is a gifted writer and a consummate communicator who has overcome insurmountable odds, but I have also come to know her as a genuine friend. Jo, I would love for you to get us started by just talking about some of the circumstances you experienced as a little girl that you can share.
Yeah, I think some of my most formative experience would have been mainly in the first 6 years of my life, really, in that my parents, who were Nigerian and lived in Nigeria, moved to England in the 60s. They split up in the 70s, before I was just around the time I was born, and moved to separate continents. And that they were clearly done. And so I spent the first 6 years of my childhood in foster care, which was a positive experience. I had a really good, gracious, lovely woman who was my foster mother. But obviously it does raise up issues of identity and belonging and acceptance and security, you know, and you don't plan that as parents, but that was the world that we grew up in. And so I think between the two things of my father not being around, I didn't actually meet him, or at least I wasn't aware of meeting him until I was 12 or so. And so with my father's absence, I mean, it's funny, you can be defined by someone's absence as well as their presence, you know? And then my experience of foster care, and I was fostered my brother and I were fostered in a white family. And so even just our sense of cultural identity and self, I don't know if we were aware of the challenges it would present. And I mean, I can't speak for my brother, I only speak for me, but the challenges it would present as I grew older in understanding who I was, whose I was, where I belonged, and what made me worthy. I think there were things at the very beginning, before I had a chance to work it out, that had already been quite definitive.
Right, exactly. And you know, sometimes when we're children, we don't really recognize that our world is so different. I was wondering, for you growing up, did you realize, or I guess certainly your foster mother, May, I'm saying that right, May, I read the book, you know, she was a different race.
Yeah.
But were you readily recognizing, hey, wait a minute, my life is a little bit different than my peers?
I did. I did when I lived with May, and I did when I came back to London as well. I mean, I think I was aware of it being different, partly because the school we were in, there was one school we were in where me and my brother were the only black kids in the school. So there were hundreds of people who do not look like you. Don't do that if you can avoid that. I recommend avoiding that as an experience. And I think when I was back with my mum, I mean, there were multiple families which took many shapes. And so I was very aware of feeling different. And I think I've probably always grown up finding myself feeling like I'm different in that environment. Whether I've caused it, created it, or whether it's just been, I've often felt like I'm the only one there, and or been the only one there, and had that added feeling.
Wow. Okay. So I also watched an interview that you did with Explore God. I stalk you. Did I say that I stalk people? I say it on most of my interviews. So I have stalked you. And in an interview with Explore God, you also mentioned that you can be defined by your father's absence. Can you elaborate on that? Because there's a lot packed into that statement.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I didn't even really understand it until I was a grown woman. because in my childhood years, I knew there was something different, but obviously I wasn't the only kid in our neighborhood whose dad wasn't around. I certainly wasn't the only child of separated or divorced parents. I wasn't the only one who'd never met their father. And so that was our normal. But in my childhood, I found a way somehow to kind of like, okay, this is how it is. You need a dad when you're a kid. Then when you're older, you're fine. And so I thought, up until the point I was 18, okay, you've got through it now. He's done what his job would have been, you know? But what I was not remotely prepared for is what I was realizing I always needed one. And
right.
what he would have been in my 20s. And so when I went to college and I saw my friends' fathers drop them off, it wrecked me. I mean, wrecked me. Not publicly, because I wouldn't present that to people because I wouldn't have felt safe to, but it wrecked me. And I realized there were things I didn't know how to do. I'd hear conversations, like when you're living with roommates and stuff and your girlfriends, and they're talking about the things they asked their dad. And I just thought, I can't do that. And it wasn't even about guys or about you being beautiful. It wasn't even that. It was practical, mundane, change the tire and my car stuff. What do I do about fixing that window stuff? All of those things. And I thought he has never been in the details, the tiny yet significant formative details of my life. The moments where people would be like, where'd you get that part of you from? And it's like, I don't know. You know, I don't know, because I'm not actually like my mum in personality at all. And I think I look a bit like her, but I look like my dad. I have my dad's height. I have my dad's physique. Everything is on from his side of the family. It's very clear when I see pictures of my father that I'm his daughter. And so it was weird to be so like somebody and not have any connection with them. I think that was quite definitive. And I think because I didn't understand the impact of a lack of fathering in my life, I didn't know that some of the questions I had, his presence would have blocked the way to.
Oh my goodness.
Do you know what I mean? So it meant that there were lots of voices saying what made me worthy, what made me attractive, what a woman should be, how I should be it, how men were, all that kind of stuff. And there was no filter to say, actually, that's foolishness. Actually, that's wrong. Actually, that's this. There was none of that. There were no expectations even to live into that a father would set. And I realized later that that would have been his role. Not necessarily only his role, and not necessarily exclusively his role, but he would have had, in the same way that his absence left this gaping hole, his presence would have had a massive impact, you know? And I think that's when I realized that and also the nature of the relationship, because he walked away, because there weren't letters, birthday presents, Christmas presents, anything like that, because maybe there were letters maybe once or twice a year. They were always very kind of first basish. They were like, hi, my name is this, my favorite color is this, and all of that, because they were on that. And I don't say that bitterly. I don't say that even angrily. It just was what it was. But I think because because that's all there was, because that's all there was just this lack of depth and understanding. And I think there was an element as well of my cultural identity, you know, as being a Nigerian in London, and there's a huge Nigerian community, but things handed down, you know, we hand things down from our ancestors as the next generation, and he would have had a huge role in that. And it's not that it didn't get filled in. It did get filled in, but I had to seek certain things out that would have been already there, you know. So I think there's those sorts of pieces.
That's powerful. What you're saying. I really want to go back, but I know we don't have the time for me to sit and just spend like hours on one statement. But I do want to read. I hope I'm going to the right place. Page 92. Because you talked about how there was no one there to kind of counter the voices that from society and from your friends. I want to read this and preface by saying I identify. This is page 92 in the chapter Known and Loved, and you say, you'd be so pretty if you weren't so dark-skinned. Stay out of the sun so you won't get even darker. Your lips are so big. Your nose is too broad. You should go on a diet. Men don't like tall women. You're exotic. I like you and I'm attracted to you, but I can't date you because you're black. I stood silently in front of the mirror with the thoughts and opinions of others echoing through my head. Some were passing comments from acquaintances. Some were the voices of opinionated strangers who felt compelled to share unsolicited advice. Some were the spoken thoughts of the guys I hung out with.
Mm.
And I wanted to just read that because I was wondering if because of your father's absence, it made you more susceptible to guys, that the first guy that was like, oh, I find you attractive, or I find that you're beautiful. Did it cause you to find yourself in relationships that were not healthy or not productive, or ones that would honor you the way that God wants you to be honored?
You know, I think there are a couple of things on this one. You'll hear my dog in the background weeping again. He'll calm down. There are a couple of things about it. My first boyfriend was very good. I'm very grateful to God for my first. I was like 15, 16 years old. Now, slightly complicated that in our family, Nigerians don't date. Do you know what I mean? So I wasn't actually.
What do you do?
You read books until you're at college, and then you're meant to automatically know who you're supposed to marry. You know what I mean? When you're a doctor, lawyer, or an engineer, then you can think about other things. But in the 80s, where we were from, you don't date. So, so I was dating this boy because I know what they said, but I was doing what I wanted to do. So, and he was a good man. He was a good guy. I mean, he was a good boy. Do you know what I mean? And so that was really helpful. But for sure, Kia, for sure, there's no defense, because there's this longing for acceptance and love, and there's no measuring line. There's no one. I'll give you an example. When I was about 17, 18, there were these guys and who used to make fun of me at school, at high school kind of thing. And I remember thinking, I said to my brothers, could you come with me we were doing a show at one night, a theatre performance. I said, would you come? And surprise to me, they came. And they came and they sat there. And I noticed how everybody treated me differently because my brothers were there. Everybody. And I said to them, would you just wave to those young men over there? And I called them by name, and I said, hey, these are my brothers. And they all looked terrified because my brothers were huge, tall men. And I think in some ways it was a bit of a metaphor, as I think about it, of what it was like. There was no one to say. It was clear I didn't have a dad. And so there was no one who, if anybody wanted to be negative or predatory, who was going to stand in the way? There ain't nobody there. There's nobody there to say, I need to watch how I treat that woman. I need to understand that if I'm taking on her, I'm taking on that 6'2" man behind her. There's no one there to do that. And there was no one to do that physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. You're an open door.
Wow.
You're an open door. You're just vulnerable. You're vulnerable to lies. You're vulnerable to assuming that pursuit is love, when actually it's pursuit. And some people come to conquer and not to commit. You know? Do you know what I'm saying?
Do I know what you're saying? Yes, I do.
And yes, I think because I'd been abandoned, for me, the highest level of love was someone coming for me. Mm-hmm. You know, someone pursuing me, when it isn't actually. It's just someone coming for you. You know, mm-hmm. I'd had one extreme. I wanted someone right here. I didn't know that they could do it with broken motives. And so you're vulnerable.
Right. Wow. Okay. So how do you get from this girl who is wounded and broken, and you have been defined, so to speak, by what has happened to you, one of those things being your father's absence, how do you get to a woman that is whole and that who knows her worth and her value? So, and I know that God plays a big role in that. I want to read an excerpt from your book that was simply just amazing, to read it and imagine it as it happened. This is page 85 in your book. It says, and you're at a church service with your friend, and you've gone to try to hit on or
secure the drama for my own destiny. Yes, that's exactly what I was doing.
Yes, okay. You weren't there for Jesus. But this happens. I heard the sound of a young woman crying. Her broken voice was saying, I want my daddy. I want my daddy. Then it changed to, I want a daddy. I want a daddy. Then I realized that young woman was me. And I'm going to skip down a little bit. And then you say, in that moment, I was revealed. My deepest self, my longings, my fears, my grief, all of it was brought out into the open. I discovered that God cared for me, for minority, voiceless me. More than that, he wanted to step in and father me. And I could go on, but talk about that experience of allowing God into your life, not just as God, your savior, but now as a father, and how you begin to reconcile some of those losses in your life with all that God was affording you in a relationship with him.
I think God has brought healing in multiple ways over the years. And I would say he's made me whole. He is still making me whole. He will continue to make me whole, you know? And so, because I think you discover at different chapters of your life what you needed, right, and what was missing. And so I think some of it was him just revealing himself so powerfully when I was young in a profoundly spiritual power encounter way. It was just like, here I am, you know, that it was literally just, here I am. And I'm here for you, because I'm in a room of like 300-400 people. And for that prophetic word to be delivered it wasn't strange to me, because that's my kind of Christian heritage. That's the tradition I've grown up in. So I knew God could. It was never about whether God could, it was whether he was willing. And to hear that he was willing to meet me that broke a chain in itself, because who else was willing? Do you know what I mean? And in my 16-year-old mind at the time, everything was temporary, and you never knew how long you'd have it for. And so for God to say, I'm here, I've always been here, I always will be here, was a healing in itself. But then there's the reprogramming and thinking, I have always been like this, and I don't know what this means. I still don't understand what it means to be fathered, because I have no frame of reference for this.
Right.
And I do remember one night as a 19-year-old literally talking to God all night about every year of my life and saying, okay, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, this happened, that happened, this is how I felt about it. And half of it was a prayer, half of it was grief, half of it was me shouting, some of it was me laughing. And it went from everything to, I think Prince is better than Michael Jackson, through to why did I feel like, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, I don't know where to start here. So I can only come up with this, to that boy never liked me, that girl hated me, I think she was jealous. Was she jealous? I think I'm right about that. I don't know. Through to, this is where I feel lonely and broken, all these things. I still don't believe you're going to answer prayers, all of those pieces, and talking to through the morning and not knowing whether God had said anything back, but feeling something had shifted because I'd begun to be in some way. I think some of it had been through mentors and people modeling what God was like, growing revelation of who Jesus is. And the Bible talks about him being the exact representation of the Father's being, and saying, if I want to know what a father's like and how God is, then I want to look at the life of Jesus. And that really helped. Getting more whole helped. There were times for counseling. I think, and in what it meant in my 20s is different again from my 30s. In my 30s, I became a mother, and I looked at things, and there was a whole collision with my past, my present, and my future all at once. And I had to take stock again. And so I think it's been gracious. God's been gracious, because it's been a journey. I was in touch with my father in my 20s, but he was very inconsistent in that chapter of his life. He really was. And so some years were good and some years were bad. And some of it was learning how to forgive. And then me saying, you know, that sacrifice I gave you, God, I'm picking it back out of the altar, because I'm done, you know, and having to
back out of what?
You know, like in terms of when I remember sacrificing all my feelings and saying, Lord, I forgive him, I release him. Oh, and then getting a letter from my dad and saying, change my mind, taking it back. We're good. And trying to work out what to do with a growing confidence in yourself and a growing sense of worth. And, you know, when I was younger, I thought, well, maybe this is what I'm worth, so this is why I'm treated this way. The irony is you get more healed and you're like, nope, this isn't this is beneath how I was wired. So why, what does it look, why? And then trying to work out, what does it look like to honor somebody who has not ever had any time for you? Right. And the oughts and shoulds, and thinking, I know you're saying I should treat him like this, but this is not someone he's not a healthy person, or at least not in relation to me. Do you know what I mean? There's back and forth, and he's a human being, and coming to terms with not just what my father had or hadn't done, coming to terms with who he was. you know? And can I say, will God be enough? And saying, God, will you fill the gap? And feeling the gap and saying, will you fill the gap that this man wasn't able to fill? And will you feel what that means for me in the most intimate, quiet parts of my life? And I think that's an ongoing journey and an ongoing prayer that's been part of my life, really. And I think some of the wholeness has come in knowing that he holds me together, that God holds me together. And so some days I feel whole, and there are days even now where I'm caught by something, and it's not necessarily whether God loves me, it's more the coping mechanisms. You know, sometimes those are harder to deal with than the wounds.
Right.
You know, the way you've kind of reiterated your life and rearranged your thinking just to cope becomes a survival tool, and you survive and it becomes quite successful, but it doesn't make you whole. So then what are you going to do?
Right.
You know, those are some of the things I've had to reckon with.
That is so good. I just want to go back to when you began to just talk to God as your father, and you talked to him all night through the morning. I love that, because it reminds me of that scripture that says we need to come to him as a little child.
Yeah.
And it kind of seems like that's what you were doing in terms of, well, this is my understanding of a father. So let me talk to God as a father and just, you know, give him the rundown of my life. And I think it's a great place for people to start.
Yeah, I think so.
Who's this concept is maybe foreign to her of knowing God as father, or it seems impossible. I think that's a great place to begin, of just the communication and just having the measure of faith to believe that, yes, God can father me. He can fill the wounds. And I wanted to ask you, what would you say to someone who's kind of wrestling with God being father?
I would say it's understandable. I think the first thing you do before you know, when you break a limb or you injure yourself, the first thing you do is not say, okay, so you got to get over there. You attend to the wound itself. So the first thing I'd say is you attend to the wound, attend to how it got there. You know, those things don't happen in a vacuum. You know, for some of us, our fathers were very present physically, but absent emotionally. Some were violators, some were wrong, some were evil, some committed evil acts against our own bodies or beyond. And so before we say, well, you know, God really likes you, because the thing that used to annoy me most, is I'd say it, and they're, oh, you need to know God really loves you. I'm like, I hear you, but when I said I don't get it, I wasn't playing. I wasn't pretending. So you saying it with a smile doesn't make it any easier for me to understand. You know what I mean? Or you can put it in a song all you want. This is my life.
Yeah.
I don't understand what you're talking about. And so I think the first thing I'd want to do is give room and give space to where that woman is at. Right. And then I would encourage her to say, you know, I'm not going to ask you to believe that he loves you. I think as the pastor said to me many years ago, he said, it's God's responsibility to get that through to you. It's not your responsibility to work out how he fathers you. You know, my kids don't have to look at their dad and say, so what, how are you going to father me? They experience him. And so they know that they're fathered, you know, and though we are human, if we can work this stuff out, God knows what he's doing. So I would say you are not under pressure to achieve understanding God loves you. You're not. That is not an expectation here of you achieving some divine state of revelation, particularly when you've come from some devastating wound. So I would say the first conversation, just have the most honest, raw conversation you have. He's not afraid of your anger. He's not intimidated by your anger. He's certainly not disappointed in it, and he knows it's there anyway. So maybe you need to go through the chapters of your life and say, year 1, year 2, years 3 to 5, and this is where I'm angry, God. Because for those of us who've been carrying these deep wounds, they're like these stagnating wells inside our heart and mind that we've never had a chance to pour out. We've just had to build bricks around it. And we've just had to keep it somewhere else because no one else has got time for it. We haven't got time for it because bills, children, life, profession. I mean, who's got time to sit down and talk about this stuff necessarily? And so we've got to give room to pour these things out. And I remember saying to a counselor one time, I said, you know, the thing I'm afraid of is if I start grieving, I'll never stop. Where do I even, I don't know where to begin. And I certainly don't think I can stop. And he said, the thing is, when you've not allowed yourself to grieve, you don't realize there's an ebb and a flow to it. You just think you're going to be overwhelmed. But as you start to grieve, the flow happens, but it will ebb, and it may take a long time because there's a lot to get out. The important thing is, rather than you stand there wondering whether you should grieve, you actually get on and give yourself permission for the journey. Because I think even that can be part of your healing. And then I think beyond that, there are different things and different steps you can take. For me, looking at who Jesus was really helpful. Having people who would pray with me would be really helpful. Counseling may be helpful, particularly for those of us who have had, I found counseling helpful, period. So I would say, get yourself a good counselor, someone who is solid and knows and knows how to lead somebody through a journey towards their freedom. I think it's a gift from the Lord. God knew how fallen and broken this world was, and he gave the world skills. He poured out gifts that we could be able to help people find their way back. I would take the time. And I think one of the things that helped me is knowing the wounds I had did not get there overnight. So they ain't going to leave overnight either.
Right.
They just ain't. And some of them have caused a fault line in my soul, have made me walk with limp. It takes a while to reset things and redeem things. And, the process of redemption was won on a cross that was painful. And as we pick up our cross, it may be holding tightly to things that in doing so are difficult to reckon with, but our Redeemer lives. There's a freedom on the other side. So I would encourage them on that. And then it may be the verses of scripture that are useful to recite, or maybe the songs that once used to really annoy you will actually become helpful again. They just used to annoy me. I'm not going to lie. I'm just like, it did my head in. I'm like, I don't want to sing about it. Don't make me sing. Don't make me sing something I don't believe today. So, but that was me. That was my angst and frustration.
That's so good. If you guys are just joining us, we are with Jo Saxton. She is kicking out the knowledge like water through a fire hose. I'm trying to catch it, y'all. I'm down the street somewhere. But I do want to, and we're talking about her book, The Dream of You, but we're also talking about the impact that an absent father has on your identity. Jo, I do want to kind of shift and talk about your father. You mentioned that he was around a little bit in your 20s, but how in the world did you reconcile with him? And you do have, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to, let's see. Hold on. I'm all over the place. Let me turn to, yes. This is on 201 of your book, and it says, years after God had revealed himself to me as Father, I hit another unexpected roadblock. I began grieving my father's absence again, this time in a completely different way than I had in my younger years. I'd seen my friends' fathers pick them up from college for Christmas break or at the end of the spring semester, or I'd seen a dad helping his daughter make a move into a new house. I'd hear them giving great car advice. It hurt more deeply than I was prepared for. And then you say, it was on ordinary days when I noticed people doing routine things that my dad's absence pierced my heart and soul. I never expected that my heart would break and my eyes would fill up every time a friend's dad carried boxes of books in from the car, helping her move into an apartment. There's another page that I want to go to, but maybe we can start this conversation just kind of talking about, how did you begin to move from I'm hurting to now I have a semblance of a relationship, or we're working to get to know each other? How did you do that? Go from nothing to something?
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that made it easier and one level harder than another is that we weren't in the same country. So, you know what I mean? I think it made it easier because it wasn't in my face every day. It made it harder because you had to be intentional. In my 20s, there were a couple of things. I was in Nigeria. I went to Nigeria, and it was actually a mission trip, but obviously my family are there, so you've got to see your people. And my dad came, and it was good to see him as an adult again. And we spent a couple of hours together and just talking, and it was awkward and good and weird and very easy and very familial all at the same time, because I'm so like him. So I got his humor and I got his quirks and everything. And it wasn't confusing. It was really good, but it was just a little surreal as well to have this kind of, there's an ocean of story between us, and yet here you are. And then he disappeared unexpectedly, which I don't know why it was that unexpected, really, because he just, that's what he did. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I think it was just this kind of, I haven't got the energy for this. And I remember someone saying to me there, this woman having another prophetic word, and she said, I've been praying for you, and I feel like God said to me that your father, you will be reconciled with him, but this time he'll take the initiative to you. And I remember smiling and thanking her, because I'm a Nigerian woman, and that's what you do when someone has a prophetic word for you. But in my head, I'm like, lady, you're crazy. Just like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, when someone steps out in faith and shares a word to you, you receive it. You thank the Lord for it, and you just say, thank you for that. What, you're a blessing. I'm praising God for you. Yes, Mark, let's take it. In my head, I'm like, that, you need to sharpen your prophetic skills, because did you just see this man leave? You know what I mean? And then, but I think there are a couple of things. Forgiveness was a key part of it. God has never put me under too much pressure on that kind of stuff. But as the healing came, the call to forgiveness got stronger.
Wait, but how though? Because that's one of those kind of ambiguous, like people, like you were saying, love God or God loves you, and they're like, what? I don't get it.
Yes, I know. And I remember being at a conference, and there was this workshop on judging people. And I thought, I'm really good at that. I'm going to go. And so I went into this. I went in, and this woman, and it was actually about forgiveness. And she said, the way you don't judge people is that you can tear up the IOU and say they don't owe you anything anymore. And I was angry. This beautiful Christian sister in Christ, this delicate, petite little blonde woman is saying these words. And I'm hissing. And I don't want to hiss too loud, because we don't need anybody to have stereotypes of black women or anything like that. But I was angry. I was so mad. And other people are like crying gently and being held. And I'm like, and I'm thinking of all the people, my list of people are like, you owe me this, you owe me that, you owe me. I went through everything. All these boys, I'm like, you owe me an explanation as to why you walked away. You owe me an explanation as to why you didn't dump me sooner. You owe me, and I was building up. And and I said to the Lord, I can admit he was a broken man. I can admit that I have to forgive who he is and all that. I can admit that he's like this, whatever. But to say that he owed me nothing, I couldn't say it. I couldn't say my father owed me nothing. He owes me a birthday presents and Christmas gifts and arguments and love. And I couldn't say that. And I'm like, Lord, I can't say it. But equally, I knew that at the same time, in this very bizarre God moment I was having, there were other people who I owed that I wanted mercy from. And but with him, I wanted justice. And I thought, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And I remember saying to the Lord, if you can help me, I'm willing to forgive, because I know forgiveness isn't a feeling. It's a choice. The feelings were nowhere. I didn't feel any love, any kind of, let's be, that's not my personality anyway. But I remember saying, okay, I can choose. The word in the Greek is for forgiveness that we see in a lot. I mean, there are a few of them actually, but one of them is almost like a severance that is as intentional as divorce. You know what I mean? A complete, it's over. You're saying it's over. And I thought, Lord, get me to the place where I can say it's over. I don't feel these things anymore. I don't need you to be these things anymore. And so I knew that I needed a tangible step. And after getting prayer and all that kind of stuff and just weeping a hot mess and grieving the IOUs, which I felt were significant. I remember writing my dad a letter and saying, I let you go. And I said, I've been at this Christian conference. If you don't want to be in a relationship anymore, you're fine. I said, I'm not going to push you. He'd said some things which were not helpful a few months before to me and my siblings. And I'm like, it's okay. You know what? I'm not going to argue anymore. I'm not going to I've got nothing to prove or defend anymore. I don't need to show that I'm a strong woman. I don't need to show I'm an independent woman. It was Destiny's Child, that era. You know what I
mean? I'm a survivor.
Anyway, don't get me started. It's all. But anyway,
we want forgiveness.
And I needed to just say it's okay. And I said, if you want to know me, that's fine. But if you don't, that's fine. I'm not going to ask you to. And I'm just going to say, God bless you in your life and your family. And that's it. And then I sent the letter, and I would. remember waiting, because it was this is pre-emails when you got like zippy responses. It's going through from England to Africa, going to Nigeria, going to Lagos, no, Ibadan, and it took time. It took time, and I'm like, Lord, I know I've torn this up, but I will find my tape and stick that IOU back together if this man doesn't write. Do you know? I will stick it back together. If this man doesn't write, I'm sticking it back. I told you this man was a trifling mess.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow. Wow.
Because, and that was the reality, because I think one of the benefits of this journey, and I will say this, one of the gifts my biological father did give me is his absence meant I had to be 100% raw with God. And so when I prayed to God, it was like this kind of kind of thing, but it was honest. It was always, there's no room for lies, because we ain't got time for lies. Anyway, the letter comes 3 months later, and on the letter, it's addressed to Joan, and my name is Joanna. And I'm like, my name is Joan. And that's not a problem, except this is the person who is responsible for half of you, and you don't know my name. So I'm beginning to feel a little bit tense about this letter. But it was amazing. And he just said, I'm really humbled and blown away. And he said, if this is what God is like, I need to know your God. I need to know your God.
Oh, wow.
And I know, it was mind blowing. And it was a roller coaster ride. But I think each step was, hey, but if you tear up the IOU and give it to Jesus, and let some room, what can God do? And there was this journey, and it was a long and arduous journey. And then my father reached out to my sister and said, could you get Jo to call? And I was in America at that point.
Oh my God. What did you say? What did you say when she told you that?
I said, why? And I said, what's going on?
I'm like, oh my goodness.
I'm like, really? And she goes, yeah, can you call him? He asked specifically that you call him. He's asking us all to call him. And I said, is he all right? And my sister's like, I don't know. And I'm like, all right. And bearing in mind, this is someone I've met 3 times. So I'm like, okay, I'll call him in a week or so. And then I suddenly in my heart thought, you know what? Let me just do it now. I'll just call him now. So I called him, and he said, Jo, is that you? And I said, yeah. And he sobs and sobs and sobs from the phone for ages. And he'd been ill. So we'd sent him some money for hospital bills. Do you know what I mean? Hospital bills and all that kind of stuff, get him treated well and all that kind of thing. Because when you're trying to find ways back, there are tangible, you're trying to find tangible things that you can do that can be a blessing. You know what I mean? When you can't do the other stuff. I mean, the siblings were fine. I'm talking about me. They were way ahead of me on that one. But and then I said to him, I goes, are you all right? And he said, I don't know. And I said, you're not. I said, you need to know you and I are at peace now. I said, Dad, the past is done. It's done. It's over. I said, you don't owe me anything. We're fine. I need you to know that everything is forgiven. Everything's forgotten. It's over. And I said, do you understand that? And he said, yes, I do. And he said, thank you. And I said, but you're not at peace with God, are you? And he said, no, I'm not. And I said, well, I don't want to put words into your mouth or anything, but I can pray for you, and we can invite Jesus to come and give you some peace, because this isn't.
You led to the Lord.
And so and I said, you know, he made a way for, you know, he's the reason why you and I can talk.
Wow.
And so we chatted for a while, prayed for a while, and prayed with him for a while. And it was, I mean, in many ways, I was just on autopilot at this point. I wasn't even really thinking about it. And I said, hey, I'll call you in a couple of weeks and see, you can let me know how the doctors, you know what I mean? Because they hadn't found out what exactly was wrong with him. And you can let us know what the latest is, and just keep us updated. And he's thanking you. And I said, I love you, Dad. And goodbye. And I remember my husband coming home, and I just said, well, that was weird. That was a weird conversation. And 2 weeks later, he had a stroke and passed away. And I remember I wasn't home, actually. My brother, I saw the phone and I looked and I thought, that's my brother's number. And I answered, and he goes, you know what I'm going to say, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I know. And he said he passed away last night. And it was, I mean, you know, I'm grateful to the Lord that, because you don't, I mean, many of us don't get to say goodbyes, period.
Right.
You know, there are other people I'm like, Lord, I wish I could have, you know, friends who have passed away. When my foster mother passed away, the grief at not being able to say goodbye is a huge thing in itself. So to have the opportunity to say goodbye to my father, to resolve, and for him to hear that he was released, and for us to be released was an amazing thing. And again, it's only God. Only God, because I know naturally I don't do forgiveness. You know what I mean? I don't do it. I pick up grudges and I wear them well. Do you know what I mean? But I found a freedom and a healing, because by that point, God really was my father. God really was my everything. God was the one who took me to places I could never get to by myself emotionally. And so that when my dad died, when my biological father died, I could just say, okay, we let him go. And yeah, I mean, God, for me, it's a weird one on one level, because I can't even say what I did, because I didn't really do anything. The Father did it. And it was this 20-year journey of forgiveness and freedom that I'm very grateful for. It's just pure gift. It's gift I didn't deserve, but I'm grateful that I got to have it.
Fascinating. That is fascinating. You didn't put all that in the book. So I'm feeling a bit special that you are sharing this I had that tag to share this. When your father died, this on 151, but this is right after May died, and you said only 5 weeks later my father died. My father, the one who had defined my life by his absence, the one I looked like, from whom I inherited my height, my personality, my eyes, my ridiculously long, flat feet, the one whose presence I had longed for throughout my youth, the man I had loved and hated in the same breath, because despite everything, he mattered to me. He was mine, and I desperately wanted to be his. My father and I had struggled to connect throughout my life, even the moments when he made me laugh or smile. I wouldn't let him see me enjoying his wit, his personality. It was as though I didn't want him to know I could forgive him that easily and love him regardless. Still, over the years, we found our way to build toward a relationship. It was tiring, it was complex, and that was us. It was necessary. So I think that's a good kind of summary on that time. And I find it so amazing that sometimes God will heal the daughter or heal the offspring in order to go back and get the parent. And I've seen that in ways in my own life, in just loving my dad with the love of Christ Jesus, because really when I look at his immediate sphere of influence, I don't see people in his life that would do that, so if I didn't forgive, if I didn't get whole, if I didn't know God as my father, I would never be able to go back and love my dad the way he did me.
Yes, absolutely.
Jesus. So that is really powerful, what you just said. So I do want to kind of shift and just talk about that's a lot, and we haven't even covered everything, but what are you grateful for? Would you, if you could talk to God and swap out some things and say, you know what, I wouldn't do foster care, God. I'd have my two parents intact, and I'd do life like this. Would you trade? Would you do a trade, or would you keep it because of what you have garnered as a result in terms of compassion, and in terms of love for people, and in terms of, just ministry?
Yeah, I think, it's hard to imagine what I would, because of the value of the people. I'm grateful for my foster mother. She was my hero, and she was a good woman. And so I can't imagine her not having been in my makeup, in my life. And it gave me a broader definition of family. It did. It gave me a broad. There are certain out there I could have missed out on some of my school years. I could have gone without that. I could have gone without that. There are a couple of boys I could have missed out on. They were opportunities I could have left behind. Do you know what I mean? Or just the kind of the grind of trying to be loved, the yearning. Right. I think I wish I could have got that sooner. But I'm glad that he takes all our broken. Nothing is wasted. That's the thing. Nothing is wasted, and I'm determined that every broken piece of me that he will take and use for his glory, and also use not to damage my children. And yes, big picture, but Lord, I don't want to send my kids and my husband crazy. So
That's funny, Joe. You are funny. And I want to say that doing this work, you know, women come from all over with all kinds of backgrounds. One woman contacted me, and she was the product of an affair. And another woman contacted me, and her father was drug addicted. And then somebody else is incarcerated. When you have some of those massive, mammoth life traumas that have happened to you, the dream of you is so far gone. Like, you cannot even begin to imagine who you could be or what you could be, because you're trying to dig yourself out of all of these, you know, layers of grief and pain. And I just want to know, what could you say to a woman who just happens by chance to have found this hangout, and they're trying to embrace a new dream for themselves, any dream for themselves? What type of encouragement could you offer them in terms of just letting go of their broken identities?
I would say it's not too late. It's not too late for a new beginning. And why shouldn't it be you? Why shouldn't you? You know, if there's a way for you to not live defined by your past, and if there's a way for you to live where you're not scared and anxious in the present, where you're not waking up in the middle of the night 3 times a night panicking about things, then it's worth pursuing. And I would say most women I know, most if not all women I know, have spent themselves on everybody else. Whether that everybody else is their children, whether that everybody else is their partner, whether that everybody else is their workplace or their friends, they've spent themselves on everybody else. And on one level that makes sense. It's that, you know, if you want to give, you give. But alongside that can often leave women not being sure of who they are. And I would say to you, you have been designed to know God and represent him in the world. You have been designed with his dreams for you in mind. And wouldn't it be lovely to have a chance to recover some of them? If this isn't it. And that rather than having brokenness have the last word on your life and your relationships and the generations to come, what would it look like to have healing and wholeness? And not even just healing and wholeness, but purpose and vision and dream and contribution had the last word on your life. That's what's on offer. Not just what's at stake, but that's what's on offer for you. That you could be, that where we hear of God saying he makes all things new, that all things new is true for you as well. He would like to make you brand new. And why not? Why not you? I think you get to have that. Or Jesus thinks you get to have it because he went to great lengths so you could. So
I love that. And what would be a good starting place? Just one simple bite out of the elephant that's a woman could take today.
I think because the process can sometimes be hard work, you do need to have a bit of a dream before you. So I would ask you lots of questions. I would say, who were you before anybody told you who you were supposed to be? What did you dream of? What did you long for? What are the things that give you life? I'd ask all of those questions because then it begins to build a picture of what you're about and for you to walk towards. Because when we're just dealing with the pain and the brokenness, it's tiring. And our coping mechanisms taste quite nice. You know what I mean? Like the food is good, particularly if it's deep fried and stuff. That tastes quite good. The drinks taste nice. The Netflix show. Why watch one Netflix show when you can watch 15, you know? And so you need a bigger picture. You need a bigger picture. So I'd get you to start dreaming. I want to give you permission to dream of the life you were made for, not the one that you are surviving and pretending is okay. That I would say, start dreaming, start longing again, start think of the compliments that your friends, like your real friends, give you that you keep on ignoring, the things which people say you're really good at that, or that's a wonderful thing about you that you've ignored. Take them on. Start dreaming again, because if you have to do things which are courageous and risky, you need to be empowered. And beginning to dream again empowers you to be courageous.
And as we're winding down, I was looking at Joyce Myers this morning, and she said that she went through a lot of abuse. And while she was being abused by her father, she said there were days where she would lay in bed and say to herself, one day I'm going to do something great. And,
Amen.
Yes, I love it. People just went berserk when she said that, but she said, I say that because I want you to know that it can happen to you as well. And
Yep.
I'm thinking about you, Jo, and how you have overcome so much. But I'm interested in knowing if when you were smaller or during your adolescence, you had that dream. Did you see yourself here speaking all over the place and writing 4 books and doing conferences and all this, or just being in a family, being in a nuclear family, wife, kids, dog, the dog.
I did not dream of the dog.
Okay, well he has manifested. Thank you, God.
Bonus, yeah.
But are there dreams you saw that have come into fruition?
It's funny because I didn't dream of speaking and things like that. I did dream of having an impact. Wonder Woman was my kind of like my childhood. Beyond my foster mother and Wonder Woman kind of covered a lot of things for me. And what it was about her was that she changed the world. So I did dream of doing something that people's lives would be changed for good and that injustice would be overturned. I don't think I knew. I think because I'd lost my voice along the way, because I felt broken, I didn't know that I had anything to say. That took a long time to come into. And when I first began, I used to be physically sick. So I wasn't happy about the idea. But I did have I did have this though, Kia. I did have this feeling, if I could just get free, I could find out what I'm here for. Do you know what I mean? If I can just, I resisted internally and externally the lies about the darkness of my skin. I resisted them and I fought them and I thought, I don't like this and it hurts, but it's also wrong. And there was a kind of one day you're going to see about me. I mean, one day. And it won't just be I'm this or that and the other. We'll turn this around because no one deserves to live like this. No one needed to grow up where we grew up. No one needed to live in that kind of neighborhood. Do you know what I mean? We all needed something better than that. So I think that was more the feeling I had in my heart and in my mind. The rest is all a bit of a surprise, really.
Well, and what a surprise it's been. It's awesome to watch your life from afar. We have just a few minutes, but I want to try to do my top 10. I try to do in this place because you're a person of interest. People follow you. So I'm just going to throw out some things and you say the first thing that comes to mind. Okay. Person you want to meet.
Viola Davis.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I had superhero, but you already said Wonder Woman. So superpower.
Oh, reading people's minds.
Oh, that's going to get you in trouble.
I know, right? Or make me very rich, depending on if I'm feeling godly that day.
Okay, guilty pleasure.
Oh, there are too many. I know what it is. It probably is a Netflix binge, but I'll be having a particular ice cream, and maybe I'll be watching The Crown all in one go. and everything is quiet. There's no cleaning. There's no cooking, and I'm having like lots of carbs, maybe Chinese takeout, and then my favorite ice cream. Oh, I might do that later, actually.
You crammed a whole bunch into.
I know. I had an experience. I needed the experience.
Okay. Dream destination.
Oh, that changes. I'd like to go to. I have a city one and I have a beach one. I've been to Australia and I love it, but I want to swim with turtles, sea turtles. Okay. So wherever I can get me a sea turtle that I can swim with, there. Maybe Madagascar or Galapagos Islands or something like that. That would be amazing. If it was I know, it's ridiculous. I don't even swim that good, but I like turtles. I watch too much Nemo. That's what it was.
Liberties. This is supposed to be just one statement. Okay.
Galapagos.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I'm not good at that.
Okay. Okay, you get a pass. There's one pass.
Thank you.
Salad or pizza?
Salad.
What? After all those carbs? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of pizza.
Favorite book?
I'm looking at my bookshelf. I will go with my one of the year because it changes every year. I'm Homegoing. Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh, it was incredible.
By who?
Let me, you know what? I've got to find her name now and I can't see it.
Okay, well, I'll look it up. Get back over here, Joe.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking. She's over there.
Okay, I'll find it. Okay, Starbucks drink.
Oh, yeah. I would like a decaf caramel latte with almond milk, ristretto shot, please.
Okay. Chapter in the Bible.
Oh, now.
I asked you all these difficult questions and you get to these top 10 and just about lose it.
I am losing it because there are so many good ones. How can I have one? I just can't take one. One is not fair. But let me tell you, I tell you what, I will go. No, I don't. Philippians. I'll go with Philippians.
Okay, Philippians.
Just all of it. Maybe chapter 3, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Last question. I'm throwing this in because I already know what it is. Favorite store.
Oh, Target.
I knew it was Target.
That is such a gift. It's like made by Jesus. It's one of the best things about living in America. Mm-hmm.
Joe, thank you very much. You are so lively. I don't think anyone has ever done this like that. Okay, last question. What's next for Jo Saxton? What do we need to be looking out for?
Okay, well, I'll be out speaking and stuff with a book, but the thing, and I'm writing another, but the thing yeah, I know it's a bit tiring, but the thing I'm really working on is what it looks like to develop women who lead. I'm really passionate.
Please.
And so I've got this little, I did a little pilot version of this event last year called the AZA Collective. And it's basically a 2-day experience for women who are already leading. And some of them were NGO leaders, business leaders, pastors, the whole thing. And just 2 days where they get to come and invest in their leadership. Because so many women I know are lonely. And when we had it, it was amazing. There were women in their 20s through to their 60s. There were Latino women, African-American women, African women, Asian women, European-American women, the whole gamut. And just seeing the things that have come as this generation of women are looking about what it means for them to lead and network. Because you put them in the room, they're already skilled, but they're lonely, they're isolated, and they're alone. Put them together for a few days, all kinds of crazy comes out of it. All kinds of kingdom initiatives, support, friendship. So that's what I want to give my time primarily to, ultimately, is equipping women leaders.
I'm excited. Guys, I hate to say goodbye. I really do, because I don't know if it's her English accent or just the nuggets that just keep falling out of her mouth. But I've been blessed. I hope you have. And I just want to say thank you, Jo, for your time. You guys, please check the description section of the YouTube video. And I'm going to put that book, Homegoing, as well as all of Jo's information. Get her book. I'm not playing with you. I'm not playing with you. And also, I just want to say, join me back next month for another exciting hangout. We're going to be interviewing Erdy Houston, and she has some awesome encouragement for you, an amazing story, and I can't wait to share that with you. If you have any needs, any resources, if you want me to pray for you, connect with me at www.fatherswap.com. Thank you so much. It's been a blessing. Bye, you guys.